Okay, cool.
Speak with Valerie.
Lovely. Thanks, Amanda, for doing that. As I was just saying before the recording started, I'm in Edinburgh for a conference on alcohol policy, and I have to say, having sat in that today, I infinitely prefer this. This kind of setup. It's that there's much more juice in it for me. I don't, if my recovery had been dependent on that kind of conference, I don't think I'd have gotten very far. And but I did have a lovely conversation with a man who kind of understands the human factor and is doing really sort of great work in his own field. But and it just made me feel really grateful for what we have, and the fact that who we are is enough. We can just show up here and share from our hearts, and things will start to move and ideas will occur to us. And yeah, so it's really for me, it's a wonderful thing. And for tonight in particular, Amanda has come up with some thoughts to sort of kick off the conversation, and I have one or two as well if we get stuck. So Amanda, I'm going to welcome everybody and hand it over to you.
Okay, lovely. Thank you. So can you all hear me okay? Is it
Yeah.
Yeah, you can hear me fine. So shall I mute everybody? Have we got any background noise?
I'll do the muting if you want. If you're and you can. There we are. Everyone's muted except you and I at the moment. And as usual, folks, if you have a question or something to share, please just unmute yourself and come in, or raise your hand if you're more comfortable doing it that way.
Ah, wonderful. Well, yeah, good to see you all again. Good to see you, Christian. I always look forward to these webinars and the times we've spent, and good to see everybody on the call, Regina and Ross and Birdie and Sue. I don't know, but nice to meet you virtually. So we've had this has been a little mini 3 series, and this is our part 3. We came up with just a title of Understanding Habits. And it just seemed quite apt, seeing that I work in the world of habits and addiction. And as a human being, I create habits and have done for many, many years, as we all have. And of course, Christian with her background and all her experience. And
bad habits.
But so excuses was something that just popped into my head after we came up with last week's call. And I think that's something that's really interesting. It's something that can be really, really cute in human behavior. These excuses that constantly jump into our heads. I don't know how it works for you guys. I don't know, how the excuses sort of department inside your minds or your heads work. I only know how it works for me. But I always find that it's I'm always absolutely I find it curious. I find it so interesting that my mind can give me excuses so quickly that I don't even need them. I'm not looking for them. I'm not asking for them. So the other day I was running late, and I was on my way to work. I didn't even realize I was late, and it's not a big problem. I don't have. It's not a big problem at all. But my mind straight away was filling me with, you could say this, you could say this, you could say this. I didn't need an excuse. I didn't have to answer. I didn't have to answer to anybody. I wasn't meant to be in a session with anybody. And I was like, that's so interesting. It was there that quickly. Really, 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 really quickly. An excuse. And so, so that noted, I really noticed that. And of course, where I work at an addiction centre here in Spain, and I hear a lot of excuses. I always find it really, really interesting that people feel the need to explain themselves or feel the need to justify themselves, or naturally that's what we do. Like, we're in a habit of that. We're in a habit of, without even realizing it, maybe, of finding excuses. Like, we look for excuses. So in the world of addiction, I think what I've seen is people have a list of excuses why they believe maybe they've drunk too much, or they've acted in certain behavior, or, you know, it's like we were born into a world that has a belief system that we need an excuse, because that's the sort of belief system that we're living, that there's something to blame. There's something to blame for our behavior. There's something to blame for our feelings. That's the paradigm that I was born into. You know, I've been around a few years. In 1969, that's what nobody had ever told me, really. I never really understood it until about 6 years ago, that nothing out there had the ability to make me feel a certain way. I mean, that's what I was born into. I believed that. I believed that what happened, circumstances, situations, and events, had an effect on me. They had the power to have an effect on me, be that negative or be that positive. So it makes perfect sense to me that the moment that I'm in a certain type of behavior, I'm looking for that. I'm looking for something to blame. I'm looking for an excuse. I'm looking for why that should be. That's the sort of the training that naturally we've been in. So coming across an understanding that helped me to see, oh my goodness, that's not the way it works. Wow, that was really empowering. I took my power back. It also meant that it was great news to know that I was responsible for all my own happiness and joy and peace and all the lovely stuff. But it also meant that I was responsible for all the sadness and the misery and the suffering. We're not always so happy to take that one on board. You know, that we have to get our heads around that one. When we get to see if what we're pointing to, that nothing out there in the outside world has the power to make us feel anything, that we create that internally ourselves. It just takes a little bit of time. It just takes a little bit of time. And so what happens is, or I don't really know how it happens, but I only know how I understand it, is that my brain is just used to that. It's got like a very busy blaming and excuses department that's got a real job's worth, you know, a real kind of head girl running the show.
Mm.
And is there ready, really ready, because, and if I forget the way it works, you know, because I'm human, so every day I jump in and out of my understanding. When I forget that's how it works, I find myself listening to the excuses, or listening until I catch it. It's like, whoa, I could really have gone down a rabbit hole there. I could really have gone down this rabbit hole, digging deeper and deeper into why and whose fault it was. And so I see that was innocently what I used, you know, I see that innocently that's what I used to do. I see that anybody around me who is either creating excuses or sharing their excuses, or playing, you know, with the excuses that have popped into their head, I can see the innocence in that as well. I can see that, because until we either work it out for ourselves, or have, you know, insightfully see it for ourselves, or somebody comes along and kind of nudges us a little bit and says, you know, hey, maybe that's not the way it works. And that's the kind of job that Christian and myself have. You know, I feel we're absolutely gifted to have a job that gets to just sort of nudge people, or just sort of, well, you know, I find myself saying, you know, yeah, I understand that that's how it looks right now, but maybe with just sort of learning a few kind of what I'd call like home truths, we get to see that, yeah, maybe we don't need to have anyone to blame. We don't need to look for excuses. That we don't need to be delving into such behaviors or delving into these, all these problems, because there seems to be something much more simpler available to us today in the understanding of how the human mind really works and how human experience is created. And once you do get to see that, well, that's how it's worked for me anyway. It's a game changer.
Yeah.
It's a game changer. I don't know if does that make sense to you, Christian, or to anybody else on the call?
Do you know, it totally does, Amanda, and it kind of chimes in with something that's been going on for me. And when you said that it's a real privilege to work with people, it really is, but it is also so wonderful that, well, speaking for myself, that I continue to see more and life continues to be easier and less burdensome the more I see it. And I had an example of that just recently. And so when you were saying the bit about, sometimes it's harder to kind of take responsibility for the negative feelings, the painful feelings that have been created. And of course, I don't see it that we're actually creating them. We're more like the recipient of what's coming through. We can't control what we're thinking from moment to moment. But I just had this thing happen recently. So I've had to be around someone who's really quite difficult. Let's just put it that way. Passive aggression is the speciality. Now, and I still find it difficult. But I had been in this person's company, and then I was walking down a street, and what I noticed was that although I still find it difficult, it used to be the kind of thing that practically reduced me to tears, where the pain was almost physical because I felt so victimized by them. And today it's just a bit difficult, And I thought that's the kind of effortless change that occurs through understanding that the principles, that we just see ourselves changing, we see ourselves freer of things. But it was also a really clear example of, if this other person's behavior is, not cool in my book, but that's up to them. However, clearly it has no power to control me, because if anything, it's worse today, but my reaction's less, if you know what I mean. So it's kind of evidence of the fact that the response that I experience, how I feel about anything, is always being created by the principles operating in me, not in this other person or indeed in anybody else. Mm. And the other thought that I had that kind of goes along with that, and I find it quite helpful when I'm stuck with something, even if it's, say a habit. One of my current bad habits, if you like, is I'm not very tidy. I'm a bit of a sort of, it's an effort. I can easily create clutter and then when sometimes I'm in the mood to do it, just get it all cleared away again. And other times I'm not. And I have this thought that it's overwhelming. And it seems like the only way to stop that horrible thought is to just walk away from it. But it's a sort of general reminder that I have for myself, which is that I don't have to feel like this about whatever it is. Mm. And often when I remind myself of that, I see that the feeling of overwhelm is nothing to do with the clutter I've created or the task of clearing it or anything else. It's just a temporary thought. And it's not necessarily that saying to myself, I don't need to think this or feel this, instantly changes it. But it begins to loosen the whole thing. It begins to remind me of how the system's really working. And it's equally true if I think, that I want a bar of chocolate or something like that. Then sometimes I just have a bar of chocolate, no biggie. But other times, if I know I'm not really hungry, but it can seem a very compelling notion that I want to get that, and just, again, just reminding myself that the thought, it's really just the thought, and I don't have to think it. So I don't know if that makes sense, but there's something about it. It's not about trying to control my thought or change it, but just a reminder that it's not quite as solid as I certainly believed. All my thoughts and feelings and desires were like, they need to be acted on. And gradually that's kind of diminished. And and I do see myself as the recipient of all sorts of nonsense that goes through my head, not all of which has to be believed, acted on, or entertained.
I love the way you say that, the recipient. It's so true. Sometimes I find myself using words that we make it up or we create, and I think it can be quite confusing for people, the words that we just use. So I know what I mean when I'm, and what I say and what somebody else hears.
Yeah.
It can often be so different. But I love that, the recipient of just what's passing through.
Yeah, and it's hard because I think it's nice not to be the sort of vocabulary police, the thought police, but also it is just that. There's just that slightly, again, it's back to the innocence, isn't it? I mean, none of us would choose to feel, murderously angry, but sometimes it happens.
So say you feeling, you've got that moment where you're feeling angry, or you walk in and the bedroom's a mess, you can't find what you need, you're in a hurry, you're trying to get out the door, you're looking for your scarf and you can't find it. Do you hear the nonsense start in your head? Do you hear the excuses? How does it work for you, Christian? Do you have a...
Sometimes sometimes it's as though nothing has changed. I might as well not have known. But when I'm caught up in my thinking, whatever it is, whatever my thing is, it's so much more short-lived, because at some point I wake up to, look at what you're doing here. Look at what you this is not the but that thing of losing things used to it was one of the things that would utterly destroy my peace of mind. If I lost something, like say my purse, now could have other means of getting through the day without my purse. If I knew it was in the house, I just wouldn't be able to let it go, and everything would be torn apart. Whereas today I just think, all right, it'll turn up later. I've got my phone, I've got my bank card or whatever, and just get on with it.
Yeah. And it's funny, isn't it, like that? You get a feeling that you haven't lost it or it hasn't been stolen. You kind of know that. You just know it's somewhere. And that's why it suits me to be tidier. Like it suits the function better. But it doesn't take long for us to get into the habit of like I've got a chair in my bedroom, and if I keep the chair clear, it's fine. The moment I put one thing on it, I put something else in it and something else in it, and there's just like a whole chair full. But
it's breeding while you're not looking.
It's so interesting, it only takes one person to leave a cup on the side, and then all the cups are left on the side. It only takes I might just mute Kate if I can.
I think she's muted herself. Oh no, right, I'm sorry, I've muted her.
It keeps moving to speak of you. So it doesn't take long at all, does it, for these habits to
I know.
And you're within a family or within a workplace, or it's like one person does something, then everybody does it, and then we can fall into those habits very, very quickly, or fall out of habits. We're all in a habit of doing something that worked well, and then we all fall out of that, and it's really interesting. It's like we're looking for a good excuse. Oh, well, nobody else is doing it at the moment. So the excuses, we grab onto those ones that really suit us. We really grab on. Do you think it'd be a nice time to just invite everybody onto the call, Christian? Or see
Definitely, yes. Lovely to hear what everybody else is making of all this, or indeed anything else that's on top for you.
Yeah. So, I don't know if anybody would like to share anything, especially the theme of excuses. If anybody's brought anything with them to today's webinar.
Everybody's very quiet tonight.
Oh, I think Kate's talking, but maybe she's muted.
Kate, you're... yeah.
Do I need to unmute myself when I speak?
Yeah, it's just, it becomes very squeaky if everybody's unmuted. You get every bit of background noise.
Okay. Yeah, I thought it was interesting what you were saying, Christian, about when you're looking for stuff and it's a mess. And I've recently been in a mess because every now and then my boyfriend shows up, and it's a very small apartment, and all his luggage, he lives out of like a suitcase and there's stuff everywhere. And I don't have as much time to myself. And so I find myself in the morning having to run out the door going, I can't find anything. And I'm getting really, really frustrated and really annoyed. And it's all because of him in my head, right? I'm like, there's just extra laundry everywhere. There's suitcases everywhere. Where is my stuff? Whereas when it's just me in the space, I'm a lot more accustomed to being able to know, okay, what bag did I have yesterday? That's where my keys will be. I've got my rhythm and my way of doing my thing for half an hour in the morning before I leave the house. And, I realized this morning that I haven't this is really crazy. I haven't opened the front door downstairs with my keys in like 2 weeks or something. Because every time I've come in, I've almost come in with him. So it's just stuff like that I'm out of my rhythm, and then I'm like, suddenly I'll be looking and I'll be like, where are my keys? I don't know where my keys are, and anyway, I get a lot of caught up in that, in my head of kind of like excuses, and really I do know that it's just about me spending more time like planning around that, coming home and then just making sure my keys are hanging where they usually are, making sure my purse is in my bag, making sure the laundry's put away or ready to go in the washing machine. It's really just, if I'm more organized, it wouldn't be so stressy. But just be more organized when someone comes into your environment.
Thank you, Kate.
I'll mute me now.
Yeah, it's funny, isn't it? The word sort of, as you said, that whole thing of slowing down, it doesn't mean that we don't do anything, but when we slow the mind down, that we don't go into that panic. And when we don't go into that panic, we stay with some sort of clarity. And that's where common sense just speaks to us. And it's so easy for us to dip out of that. And when common sense is there, it's just easier. It's just easier. Yeah. Oh, bless.
I think Ross, did you have your hand up, Ross? Were you going to come in? Yes, he did. He is. I'll unmute you. There you go.
Hi.
Hello, Ross.
So I will always find an excuse to do something later. I always want to wait till something more interesting pops up that I could maybe do instead. But the whole fact of excuses in my head, I've just got in tonight and I've done so many jobs just with like, stop excusing, stop putting that back. So I've done a couple of loads of washing and just stuff that I'll think, I'll leave that for the housekeeper. I'll do this, I'll do that. And I've actually just had a really productive evening just before this call, really, just because of that. And just, like Kate always takes me half an hour to leave the house some mornings and I'll always be late. Keys, or half the time I've put the keys next to the front door so I won't lose them, and then I'll go half in the usual places. It's like, oh fuck, excuse my language, I've put them there so I have to trip over them. Do you know what I mean? I'm just so just consciously not using those excuses. I've had a very productive evening prior to this, so thank you.
It's cute, isn't it, Ross, when we catch it, the cuteness of us, I'm doing the same thing at the moment because like I keep swapping bags. It's exactly the same. It's like wintry. I've just got the winter clothes out and it's swap bags. It sounds great. And then I don't know which bag what's in, and it seems like I've really it's just easier when you've got one bag. We complicate. It feels like we complicate things. But something just jumped into my mind when Ross was saying that. Like, I remember when I had that realization that the house didn't all have to be completely tidy and everything in its place for me to be okay. Like I remember one day saying, I don't know, did we talk about this on last week's call? Or was that another webinar? I don't know, I can't remember. But
I'm afraid I can't remember either.
Sorry if I'm repeating myself. I've been on a few webinars this week. But I remember, you know, wishing almost for talking to a friend of mine who was a coach and saying, oh, I just would love this idea of everything being in its place. Like I'd love this idea of almost like time stopping, that there was like nothing to do. There was no washing to do, no ironing to do, no tidying up to do, no emails to, you know, like you were all caught up to date. As if, I don't know, you'd get caught up to date and time would freeze and you could just hang out in that space for a little bit. And I remember her saying to me, oh, so you think that feeling is coming from out there? You think that if everything in your office is in order and if everything in your house is in order, that's where that good feeling is going to come from. I was like, oh yeah, I do, obviously. And it still can feel like that to me.
Yeah.
There is this feeling of like, I have a cleaner come once a week and it's my favorite day. And it doesn't matter what day it is, right? So sometimes she normally comes on a Tuesday, this week she comes on a Thursday. So, you know, it's my favorite day, whatever day she comes, because there's something about walking in and it's lovely. It's lovely. And I'm much more at ease around my house, because if I've spent 5 hours doing all the cleaning and then somebody puts something out of place, it's like I take it very personally. Whereas if somebody else has done it, it's like a dream. It's like the best gift, it's best gift to myself, this feeling. But that feeling doesn't come from, it can't do.
Yeah.
You know, we can't talk about that this works like 100%, no exceptions to the rule. And so like what I'm wishing for is like for time to stop, and it never, ever, ever does, as my body never, ever, ever stops. And neither does the thinking system. It is always, in action. It is always on the move.
Yeah.
It's never permanent. It's always temporary. That's just the way we are constantly moving on to the next moment in everything. And it's so that was really interesting, that seeing how it still feels to me often like that good feelings are coming from out there, from things out there. So some people I can function when things are a bit messy. Like I'm okay. My dad used to call it organized chaos when he came to my house. Or he'd always do that, especially when the children were younger. He'd walk in, he'd go, you've been burgled. Oh, cool. This is how you live. Because I mean, they just couldn't, that my mum's really tidy, like super, 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 like tidy. But I don't need to be like that. I can function quite well with a bit of chaos around me, and actually that's a gift. The gift to be able to do that, I think, but that doesn't mean it's not easier for me. Like, I'd rather be organized, I'd rather be tidy. That's just what my preference is. But if it's not like that for half a day or a week, then that's also, I'm okay with it. I'm okay.
Cool. So who else? What has brought some of the rest of you to the call tonight? We've had some who've been here before and some who haven't. And it'd be lovely to hear from as many of you as possible.
I'll take that back.
I can't think of any of my habits at the moment, but I can see habits of other people, which really annoy me. It just reminded, when you were saying about the house being all cluttered and untidy, I was just fascinated to realize when my son was at home, right, I'd go in his bedroom and he'd be like a foot deep with all this stuff on the floor. I go in and I said, right, I'll tidy it all up. And he used to get really cross and say, why do you tidy all that up? Because I knew exactly where everything was. Now I don't. And sure as eggs, he did, because I'd go in and say, right, where's so-and-so? Can I have so-and-so? And he'd just put his hand down and he would find it, pull it out. And I thought, how did you do that? But the funny thing is, now he's grown up and he's got his own children. He's so tidy. He's really tidy. And I thought, oh, how can we change our habits like that? Yeah. But I hear him going on to his children now.
Using your words, Birdie, sorry.
Oh, yeah, I guess they are. Yeah, like an echo. And then this morning and Sunday morning, two of my neighbours, I think, have got this habit. If they can, they'll drive across my front lawn and cut the corners to go onto the main road. Oh. And it's really annoying me, but they'll do it either when I'm not there or when I'm not around. But I know it's them because where the tire marks are coming from, the direction they're coming from, it's really naughty. So I've been out, I've put a great big boulder at the front of the drive, but now today I've been buying more boulders to put all along on the edge of the drive so they don't drive across my lawn. But I thought once one person starts a habit, as someone was saying, who was it, Amanda, everybody else follows a habit. So we've got to stop it in this infancy, really.
The little devil in me was coming up with the very non-spiritual response of nails.
Yes. Well, I've been thinking of that because of one girl. She does a real twirl, right? And then she revs her car up like crazy. Then she stops it dead in front of my kitchen window and revs it again, and then takes off at speed lightning. And the neighbours are waiting for her to spin out of control. And I thought, how can I put a load of grease on that? And then I thought, no, maybe what I'll do, I'll get a whole load of soil and put it right across the front of my garden. And I thought, they won't want to drive into the soil. All these mad ideas have been coming up. My creativity's been working overtime.
Yeah.
I love what Birdie said, though, how isn't it easier to see it in other people as well? So we're very good at spotting other people's habits and their excuses. It's easier than spotting our own sometimes, isn't it?
Oh, yeah. But I have got one habit. When I see them doing that, I get very angry.
Oh, bless you.
Yeah, I get really upset about it. So, yeah, hopefully they'll deliver the stones either tomorrow or by Friday. So that'll be okay then.
Yeah, and that's just wisdom showing up too, right? Okay, like, what can we do about something, or what can't, can we do something that's really easy? Or we can always, if we can't just have that conversation or, I don't know, talk about it, what can we do that's easy? And you come up with a solution yourself, and, and even though it's funny, isn't it? Like, whether it's what might be a little thing to somebody is a huge thing to somebody else.
Yeah.
But it's what we're talking about is the sort of the design, if you like, the design of habits, the design of excuses, whether that's food, drugs, alcohol, gaming, technology. It doesn't really matter. It's just the habit, never mind the content that we're talking about. I hear a lot of excuses about the phone. I mean, I don't know. I think we live in a world that's quite addicted to technology. As a rule, all of us, myself included. I don't know how we used to survive without our phones and emails on the phones and all those sort of things. But I hear that a lot. I hear the excuse of sort of feeling like, oh, it's rude to be on my phone so much, but then I have to sort of give my excuse of why I need to use it. So I'm obviously, judging that other people are judging me, or that I shouldn't be on my phone because, in the middle of a conversation, or I just, yeah, they're popping up all the time, constantly. Anybody else got any? Has anybody else got anything that they want to throw into the conversation of excuses?
Or anything at all? Any questions?
Yeah.
Oh, my habit of eating chocolate. And in the winter, my excuse is it helps me keep warm. Because the army have it always in their little kit bag to keep them warm. So, and when I first met my boyfriend, who became my husband a long time ago, he always used to buy me chocolate in the winter on his way home from work just to keep me warm. So I still
I've never heard that particular excuse before, Virgie.
You've heard it before?
I never have.
Yeah, but I don't eat as much, and I don't eat the whole bar anymore, or very rarely do I. Yeah, I'll have a couple of pieces. So I have improved a little bit.
I think it's true. I think it does make you warmer. It does. That works for me. I understand that. It's funny, isn't it? Like, what is truth? What is truth? It's truth for me in the moment, until it doesn't look like that anymore.
I'm conscious here now tonight just of being very appreciative of you, Amanda, and of everybody else on the call, and of just that the chance to show up and whether people share or don't share, just as ourselves. There's a truth in that about me, that there's no, that there's no front, there's no qualifications. So, I mean, some of us may have qualifications, that's not what I mean, but in order to be here, that just being who we are is enough. No, that being in touch with that sense of our true self is enough. And there's something I find deeply comforting about that. And I'm just very aware of it tonight. And perhaps it's in contrast to the kind of day I've had, but I'm very grateful for it.
God bless you. It's lovely. Where you were today, Christian, was that something that you've been to before?
No, I was invited along to a conference on alcohol policy, but it was sort of like and it's a funny thing because nobody. It was all academics, and it was lots and lots and lots of statistics, and some of those things are good to know. There were things that were that were surprising to know, but there's something that is not that. The human connection is missing. And I don't mean that people aren't friendly or personable, but there's something, everything's hidden behind a mask and a front and the title and so on. And, there's nothing wrong with it compared to any other similar academic kind of conference. But I was just thinking about just how much more sustaining it is to be able to connect with people. And you can be, in whatever, however you're showing up to today. As it happens, most of us who've shared seem to have been quite light-hearted, and that's lovely. But it's fine. It would be equally fine if any of us weren't, or anybody else in the call weren't. And and it doesn't, nothing that we say needs to be justified by statistics or facts and figures. It's just, we're just sharing from the heart. So it was true. If you're talking about truth that inspired me to get onto that. We're sort of moving away from excuses, I realise, but yeah.
It's funny, isn't it? Because do you think that's because what we kind of share in the inside out understanding, or the 3 principles, is that we take it away from the personal. Like, you know, we talk about how it works the same for every single human being. Like the way the thinking system works is the same for every single human being by its design.
Yeah.
So we take people away from the personal, but we're so used to being in the personal that I think that's why we feel this need to have our excuses or have ourselves validated, or the reason why we're in the habits of almost like defending ourselves, or sticking up for ourselves, or wanting people to see who we truly are, you know. So we might, you know, if our house is a mess one day, or our behavior's been something, we find ourselves explaining that. Like we have to, it feels like we look for something to explain ourselves.
Yeah, and I think the more that you have a sense of who in fact we truly are, you know, our essential self, our core, our home, whatever word or phrase that people like to use, I think the more that, well, again, I'll speak for myself, the more that I have a sense of that, the more that the other stuff doesn't matter, and the more enjoyable it is to connect with others at that level, you know, to have that. You know, sort of this connection at an that essential level. No bullshit. Just who you are is enough.
Yeah. It brings you back. I think it just brings you back more present, and it helps us to we get over, like you said before, get over stuff much, you know, it's just a much quicker sort of moving on from nonsense.
Yeah.
Moving on, because we can get very caught up there, very, very, very caught up.
Yeah.
In how we think something should be, or how we want something to be.
Yes.
And then it isn't that way.
Yeah. And when you talked about presence, Amanda, I think that's another very simple and helpful concept. I mean, it's not, it doesn't need to be anything elaborate. It's not about creating a presence or anything like that. But it's just being here, and doesn't even involve sharing. It just be listening in the background. But there's something very powerful about it. It's and it is the thing that takes us out of the past and the future as well. That just allows us to, you know, dropping into presence. And the more present I am, the less, it's just by definition, the less I have in my mind.
I like inviting people to just, for me, it's really about awareness. I find myself, especially, you know, if I'm with a coaching client, or I'm at work with any of the guys at the recovery centre, inviting them in to just become the observer, or become the witness, or whatever words make sense, to you know, look at the character. So you look at the Christian character, or the Kate character, or the Ross character, or the Birdie character, you know, and watch them kind of play in this game. Watch them playing being Christian or being Kate, and caught up in their, you know, what we do. Just, you know, it's just or how we think we are, and listening out, like this awareness of listening out to this little voice that's constantly rabbiting on. I don't know how yours works, but, you know, sometimes that's for me. It's catching the sound. There's something for me, I don't know, that it's the sound of that voice that's a little bit different. It's a little bit different. That's how I hear it, like a voice. But it's for me, when I hear the excuses or the blaming or any of that sort of stuff, for me it's a much more faster sort of speedier, you know, I really now can, it's almost like I can hear my ego in action. I can hear it speaking to me. I can hear the excuses, like somebody, I think Birdie was talking about the chocolate, and that conversation is going on inside my head. The moment I even see it, if I've made my mind up that I'm not going to sort of eat anymore, you know, try and be aware of the amount of sugar that I intake this week, and the internal conversation that why I should and why I shouldn't and why I should and why I shouldn't, and then the old sod it button just goes. Now the thing is, isn't it, that with a piece of, you know, the odd piece of chocolate, the odd biscuit, that it's not going to kill me.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's not going to kill me. But somebody who might be, you know, a bit further down the line, where their habits have turned into an addiction, where it can be quite dangerous. So for somebody who's sort of caught up in alcoholism, or somebody who's, you know, the moment they were to sort of take a drug or take a drink, and they know they can't stop, then it's really, really helpful to hear those excuses coming in, and to be able to I don't know, to be in a much better position to kind of bat it off before it sort of takes a grip. You know, you talked earlier about taking a grip. These thoughts appear, and then it's like, the moment I forget they're just thoughts, the moment I forget that, they feel very, very, very real. It's like this, it reminds me that, you know, like the jar, you know, if you've got a jar that's closed with the lid, it's really tight. It's like when I remember that they're just thoughts, it's like I loosen that lid, yeah? I loosen it. It loses its tough, like, tough power and strength. It's like, I you know, that's helpful for me anyway. It's really, really helpful for me about catching it, the awareness of that's what's going on. Like, listen to it. Like, listen to that internal chatter.
Yeah. There's another thing that has happened to me a lot. It's actually happened to me a lot in my life, I would say, but I didn't fully get it. I didn't fully notice it until I came across the principles, and it certainly happened to me a lot since I got into the principles. And it's, I just find myself no longer doing a thing that I used to have difficulty, you know, stopping, you know, or preventing myself from doing. You know, I just suddenly find that I am different. You know, it's not a problem anymore. And I suppose an example was the one I gave earlier of when I walked down that street thinking about the passive aggressive person, this used to affect me much more, and it's a change. I mean, that one hadn't completely disappeared, but it was a change. There was a lot more freedom around it. But there have been other things where it's just gone. You know, and one of my mentors, Keith Blevins, talks about this effortless evolution that happens to us. That the more deeply that we see that the whole of experience is being created by the principles, by thought, powered by mind and consciousness, the more deeply we see that, then the more change just happens within. And I love that. I think it's maybe because I'm sort of born idle, you know, or naturally lazy. But I love that when you just when that transformation, and it might be a transformation around something quite small, but it has been in my life, such as with alcohol. You know, transformation around something really massive, and I love it when that happens, and I love the sense that I have right now that that's probably going to continue to show up in my life, and probably going to continue to show up for each of us, the more deeply that we go with this. And what a gift, what an extraordinary thing. And I sometimes I hear people talk about, Sid's work. It's really just restatement of other things. It's been around forever, and clearly the principles have been how we've been operating forever. But I don't think there's nothing I've come across that is quite as simple and as accessible as the way Sid explained that. And it's such a privilege to be part of that. I think to have stumbled across it for myself, and also to be involved in passing it on to others, and seeing that light. You spoke in the first webinar, Amanda, about lightheartedness, and seeing people really light up. I mean, it's like you literally see a change in people as they get this, and become enlightened. And I don't mean that in any pretentious way, but they're just lighter than they were. That lightheartedness is available more and present more. So I feel as though I've drifted off the topic, but here we are.
Because I think it's really lovely to see. I don't know. I've always seen it like, I know we're all enlightened. Actually, our natural. That's who we are. We are enlightened beings, but with this misunderstanding of how thinking works, and it's the thinking that can get in the way. That's kind of it. The misunderstanding of how it works is really what gets in the way and causes the confusion and causes, for me, really suffering that starts off. And so that is the real innocence. That's the real innocence, And I think when we can get to laugh or be more lighthearted about it, even if it's quite serious things, but we just get to see, no one's been hurt, we haven't hurt anybody, or, it's like, wow, some of the things that we get up to, like, how did that happen? Like where did those ideas come from? Or, that's, we're quite incredible. As human beings, I think we forget how incredible we are and how amazing we are, and how creative we are. And a lot of time is spent on as a society, I don't know, about, the more sort of focus is on how bad we are and how awful we are and how naughty we are. And I mean, it's not the world I live in. It's not the world I live in now. But if I pick up newspapers, or if I'm lucky because the people around me are pretty positive.
Yeah.
And I love that. I love this community. I just love life. There's something about having this great appreciation for aliveness, and seeing that from that place of aliveness, all sorts of experience springs from there. And there just seems to be expressions of love or expressions of fear, and not one is particularly better than the other. It just feels better to me. It feels better to me when I hang about in that higher, sort of higher place of being, or higher mood. When I'm in a better mood, it just feels better. I don't have so much thinking. I just get on with my day. I get on with friends, and then I dip down and I back up again, but I dip down and back up again. See that resilience bounce up much, much quicker. And it just doesn't suit me. It doesn't suit me to fall into being a victim or self-pity, or I can easily fall into those spaces really, really easily, and very easily fall into, we're all the same, underneath it all. By design, we're all the same. We've got this thinking system that I just think nobody really was able to articulate it in the way that it seems to be these days, that people are able to talk about it in a way that normal people like us guys can understand it. So Sydney Banks wasn't saying anything so different than lots of other sort of theosophers or have said years before, but nobody could really understand that language.
Yeah.
There's something magical, something magical about about the way that he did that was point back to just be ordinary.
Yeah.
Keep it simple.
Yeah.
We strive, and the ego, and that we've got to be the best and get here, and there's places to go and places to get to. We've lived in that world of chasing dreams, chasing feelings, to just realize, oh, right, yeah, we're good just where we are, right here, right now. We're good.
Talking of right here, right now, Amanda, I'm conscious of the time. We are coming to the end of our time, and yeah, I do want to say again, thank you all for those of you who have joined us. And I don't know if you want to say anything about the next time we're working together, Amanda. Which, well, maybe we'll be working together between now and then, but we're working together again next year, aren't we?
Oh, I'd love to. Yeah, I'd love to talk a little bit about that. Actually, Kate's also on the call, and Ross, somebody who's been on a retreat. Yeah, so Christian and I and Kate and a few other facilitators, Stephen Desborough and Dr. Frederick Kinman and Anke Erman are coming together as a group of facilitators and running a retreat called Love and Clarity down in the Spanish mountains. Absolutely amazing venue called Hidden Paradise down near Granada, and that's going to be a 7-night retreat, 7 days, 7 nights, from the 14th to the 21st of March. We're going to have
just before Brexit, and also, more importantly, St. Patrick's Day celebration. Over St. Patrick's Day.
Yeah, we're down there for St. Patrick's Day, and Frederick is a fiddle player and a musician. He'll be bringing his fiddle, and we'll be so we'll have live music around the campfire kind of thing. It's really lovely. Got a beautiful setup down there. Beautiful. If anybody's interested, do go and have a look at the it's loveandclarity.strikingly.com.
I'll put the address on YouTube.
Wonderful, it's really a very magical space. Magic happens down there. It's a beautifully designed project that's off-grid. Wonderful food, all of that lovely, wonderful stuff. And we'll be exploring this stuff in a very light-hearted way. So it's yoga every morning by the lovely Kate Moss, who's on this call. Start the day in a beautiful dome that we call the spaceship, all wooden, with a big fire in the corner. So it's really special. It's really, really special. It's sort of back to nature. Sort of posh basics, but it's good. It's wonderful. So we have got some spaces left. If anybody's interested, then just get in contact with myself or Kate or Christian, and we'd love to spend a week with you. It's going to be super, super special.
Oh, cool. That sounds great. I can't wait to see it.
Yeah. It's amazing. You'll love it. I know you'll love it. Yeah, and it's a really safe place, actually, just to mention, Christian, if anybody's in recovery, it's the actual venue is a non-alcoholic kind of zone. So it's not like some people will be there or partying. It's quite a detox for mind, body and spirit. So we'll be down there, and it's a nice, safe place to hang out in a healthy kind of, have a healthy week down there. So that's our next venture, and I just wanted to mention that we have recorded this webinar. So if anybody is not happy about this recording going out, if you could just let us know. Otherwise,
let us know now.
Yeah. Otherwise,
like 2 seconds to do that.
We'll upload it to YouTube so other people can have a listen in.
Emma's asked where this is posted. It's posted in the 3 Principles Conversations group on Facebook, and it will also be on YouTube. We'll have to work out the logistics because Amanda's been recording it this week, but hopefully that's fine.
Yeah, and it's only the people that are speaking that actually are shown onto the recording.
Oh yeah, sorry, but Is that okay? Is that okay, Emma? You're not.
Shall I stop the recording now?
Yeah, stop that. That would be great.
We can say cheerio to everybody who's watching this.
Yeah.
We'll speak to you all soon.